All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to our YouTube channel, The Good Inside. And again, this is Alan Newell, and I'd like to welcome you to our channel and want to always remind everybody to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you know when we update videos. I've got an amazing guest with us today who's going to cover a topic that I'm getting, tons and tons of questions on, is the CBD. What's going on in the CBD market? What's the hemp product all about? And what's going on there? And so, with all the questions that I've gotten answered, I wanted to bring a true expert in. Eddie's been in the industry, nutrition industry, for almost 30 years now, and is just really one of the most educated and experts in the field of whole food plant-based nutrition and quality nutrition and the CBD oil as well. So we're going to get to that in just a second, but I just want to let you know that this channel brings you continuous information about health and nutrition. That's what we're all about: health, nutrition, and even the ability to turn that into a part-time income if that's something you're interested in. But I want to go right ahead and jump right into the topic that we're talking about today, and that is the hemp oil industry. Everybody's wanting to know, what's it about? What's going on? Where can I get it? What should I get? Should I get it? Should I take it? What's it good for? And so I figured today we would answer all those questions. And again, my guest is Mr. Eddie Stone. He's the founder and CEO of Touchstone Essentials. He's been in the nutrition industry for almost 30 years now, basically his whole adult life, doing research and study. And he has the largest international whole food plant-based nutrition company in the world, shipping products to over 60 countries around the world, and has been very educational when it comes to whole food plant-based nutrition and even the CBD world. Eddie, I'd like to welcome you to the call.
Alan, thank you for having me. Enjoy the chance to be a part of what you're doing here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we've both seen over the past 18 months, the hemp oil and CBD oils, they're gaining recognition from even the health experts today. Everybody, all the people, from a wide range of benefits: easing stress, anxiety, relieving pain, discomfort, calming the mind and body, and really helping people sleep. And so I guess my first question is why now? Hemp oil has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But now in the past really 18 months or 24 months, it's really gained a lot of recognition and notoriety and been brought to the forefront. Why do you feel like that it's done that in this time and now?
Well, I mean, you're exactly right in your description. I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to feel like it's exploding, and not just exploding, here in the States, but really all around the world. I was reading some material last evening, and in Thailand, which is one of the countries that have been pretty prohibitive about anything associated with cannabis or marijuana or things like that. They're about to pass legislation to approve medical marijuana, which is sort of this first domino to start falling in Asia. So it is popular. And, sometimes when we think about cannabis, it's called the sacred plant. I mean, that's sort of how long the history is, because you got those kinds of descriptions. And really, this sort of starts in the States just really a few short years ago, where there was a highlight on CNN of a young girl who got relief from really dramatic and life-debilitating seizures, and hemp oil, specifically hemp oil with a heavy concentration of CBD, gave her life back. And that really began a dialogue and a discussion. I think there's always been a real empathy, or maybe it's a sympathy too, for children and young adults and people struggling at that age. And so some people who had sort of legislative roadblocks in their mind about, well, is cannabis a drug? Is it an illicit drug? Is it just a recreational thing? And so I think it opened up the doors to people sort of paying attention to, hey, there's more going on here, and we can't just be dismissive, because cannabis has been controlled from a government standpoint almost like it was a hard narcotic, which in fact it is not. And so then in the last several years, as we saw the economic impact of the hemp industry, I mean, things have just really exploded. And then just a few short weeks ago, the U.S. Congress, Senate, President came together to sign a farm bill that brought more clarity in terms of the legalization of hemp, which CBD is a part of. And so for those that don't know, when you think about something like marijuana, or you think about something like CBD oil, the reality is they're botanical cousins in terms of the plant. The cannabis sativa plant is the plant where all of these things really originate from. Now, of course, they're they're bred and hybridized as you do with agriculture to create certain dynamics that you're looking for, but it's all the same in that regard. What gives it its legal definition is that a plant or a cannabis plant that's 0.3 or less of THC is considered hemp in this country, and it's just gotten its sort of legal recognition at the federal level through the Farm Bill, and things that are above 0.3 THC are considered marijuana, and we get into recreational regulations or even medicinal marijuana, so that also has its own separate regulations, and so that's really the distinguishing factors there.
Yeah, exactly. And now you hear a lot about industrial hemp. And people saying, well, it's industrial hemp. And that's kind of confusing to people because when they think of industrial, they think of the steel mills and the plants. Sure. Can you kind of touch on that word and why they're using that?
Yeah, and I think those are just ways for people to compartmentalize, particularly that are dealing with it from an industry standpoint. So, and you'll see that it played out in some legislative bodies around the country. Remember, we've got people from Kentucky to California to Washington to New York, New Hampshire, all points in between that are working on their legislative side of what do we do with hemp, because they do realize that hemp plants, so call them industrial if you want to, can yield a lot of byproducts that can be useful from fibers that are used in textiles. We tend to think of rope, right? Everybody sort of knows of hemp rope, but hemp can also be a part of fabric. And so I think that's what that means. It's not a clinical term. And so industrial hemp is going to have all types of definitions. By default, it means that it's 0.3 or less, but I've seen where a lot of what I would refer to as industrial hemp production is where they've bred the plant to be tall so that it's easily harvested by a combine, because they're not really looking to protect the biomass in the way you might if you're trying to harvest hemp seed oil or hemp oil or phytocannabinoid rich oil from the stalks and the leaves and the flowers. And so that's one way it's distinguished, is that way. And so I tend to think of loosely industrial as what's used for, say, production of textiles and other uses of fibers in that regard. And then when we talk about medicinal hemp, now we're talking about cannabis that's probably been bred to have an exaggerated amount of CBD versus THC. So it's going to be low from its origination standpoint in the THC. Obviously, if we're going to call it hemp, then it's got to be below 0.3 THC in terms of its yield. And so I recognize the confusion, but if you dive in a little bit, think of one as sort of the outer use with fibers and ropes and things of that kind. And then you've got that middle ground for producing phytocannabinoid rich oil.
Exactly. And, not to get too technical here, the body has an endocannabinoid system. All animals that have a spine have an endocannabinoid system. And the cannabinoids, including the cannabidiol in the CBD, they say is what you get the result from and how that helps the body. But everybody, the questions I get is, we don't understand, how can this help me? How can this help me sleep better? How can this, kind of touch on the benefits of that and how this really does, how it works.
Sure. And so you identified the main mechanism of action there, which is the endocannabinoid system. And sometimes you'll hear descriptions, they're kind of simple descriptions, but you've got receptor sites. CB1 is commonly recognized, CB2, but this system, this regulatory system with receptor sites, also impacts other hormonal functions and productions in the body, including things like serotonin, right? So, there's a lot going on here, but in broad strokes, the benefits that are beginning to be realized by using hemp in these ways is because it brings a balance to the system. And where that becomes sort of acutely effective is if you consider sort of the modern world we live in, and the industrial pollution that's just sort of part of life. Even if you can't taste it or smell it or see it, there's some 80,000 different chemicals, very few that have been really studied and very few that are regulated, that are kind of part of the existence of the modern life so that we get to enjoy our mobile phones or our fast food, right? All these things involve chemicals. And we know that they're very disruptive to the endocrine system, your hormone system, thyroid problems that sort of leap out of this type of dynamic. And so anything that can bring some balance back to the body and try to get the body back to a position of homeostasis, right, where there's proper function of the hormonal system, there's proper function of the immune system, and then there's side benefits associated with antioxidant qualities if you've got the right kind of phytocannabinoid rich oil, right? And so it brings a balance so that the body can repair itself. I'm reminded all the time that, half of what we need to do from a health standpoint is just put the body in a position to do what it's intended to do. And so that means eliminating things from your lifestyle and your diet as much as it means, I think, the things that you're adding. And so if you just sort of consider this modern world we live in, I think that's why we're seeing this explosion in terms of the benefits people see, because they're in desperate need of that balance. And this can be not just because it's physical chemicals you're seeing, just the stresses of all the screen time and the availability and the competitiveness of the economy. And we're U.S. workers working more hours than they've ever worked at any point in history, and they're more productive than they've been at any point in history because of technology. But that doesn't mean it's easier on the system, right? Most of us don't even feel like there's enough time in the day to take a 10-minute walk in the evening. So, of course, anything like this that can bring back some balance is very much appreciated physically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I get asked this question all the time, is CBD oil or hemp oil, is it addictive?
There's no evidence to support that whatsoever. And so that's not something that we have seen even with this explosion of use. There's just nothing in the literature and nothing to suggest that that's the case. It's almost, like food and oxygen and other things where the body is quite happy to get it and use it, but it's not something that creates an addictive impact. And in fact, Alan, one of the things I think that's exciting for us as a society, particularly considering just the devastation of this opioid epidemic that's going on in this country and others, is that there are some clinics and institutions now using CBD oil to help people get off of these hard narcotics and other problems, all the way from issues like that to smoking cessation. So there's a lot when you bring some satisfaction to that immune system and balance to the stresses in the life of the body that can be quite beneficial. So I'm excited about what we're going to learn in the years ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I just read an article yesterday that said that in the studies that they've done so far, that over 50% of the people that are using hemp oil and CBD oil have been able to completely remove opioids, those that are using it for pain. Over 50% in this clinical trial they're doing have been able to completely stop using opioids. And that's very impressive.
I'm not surprised, just based upon the anecdotal feedback we get from, the thousands of customers and folks that we get to work with on this product. And one thing to keep in mind, this recently passed Farm Bill also opens up federal dollars and federal sanction of research at the university level on this subject matter, which heretofore we haven't been able to do. So it's exciting to have this opportunity now to really go explore the impact of this plant.
Right. I agree. Now there's different strengths that, that you see on the marketplace. There's everything from 250 milligrams to 1500 milligrams and sometimes even higher. And so how would someone know, what milligram to use and then how to use it? How often should they take it and how often should they use it? For somebody, for example, with muscle soreness and discomfort. I work out a lot, try to anyway. And I have muscle soreness, but occasionally I get an injury, injured my back a little over a week ago. And it was kind of interesting because I used the 1500 milligram, the Calm CBD oil. And within 5 minutes, my back pain and what I noticed more than anything was just the stiffness and the tightness of my back was relaxed and gone. And so was the pain. So what's the best way for people to use this product?
Well, probably some of the audience will be a little frustrated with this, but truthfully, it's fairly subjective to, your own experience, and you are going to have to do some sort of self-experimentation here. But here's what the research has shown. The research has shown that generally someone getting a 10 milligram dose up to a 75 milligram dose to as much as 100, but that 10 to 75 milligram dose tends to be that range where people really see something happen. And of course, it's like anything where, you've got some people that can have 8 ounces of coffee with that much caffeine, right? Which is probably about, say, 60 to 90 milligrams, and that'll power them through the day. And
Right.
for other people, 8 ounces of coffee doesn't even get things started, right? They need a couple of those venti size drip coffees from a Starbucks or something, right? And so there's some variance there, and you'll have to think about it. We chose to introduce a 750 milligram product because based upon the majority of what we've seen, we believe that 25 milligram per usage dosing is sort of a sweet spot, and people need to think about that. So if someone is using, say, our Calm 750, one pipette of that, one of the droppers of that, is going to give you approximately a 25 milligram dose of CBD oil plus all of the other cannabinoids, because that's a rich oil in cannabinoids and the terpenes and the flavonoids. So that's going to give you that, and you'll just need to think about, okay, is this what I'm looking for? Because some people are using it perhaps like you've just described, where you're trying to recover, either just the natural recovery of going to the gym or maybe you tweak something. And so this is going to better help support your body by helping to control inflammation, right, which aids in the recovery of muscles. But someone using it for sleep, maybe the story is slightly different, right? Maybe they need more or they need less, and so they have to play with it. Here's generally what I've seen. For people that need it for sleep, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour before it's time to go to bed, they're using a dropper full under their tongue, holding it there. I suggest also, from a lifestyle standpoint, put your phone away, right? Position yourself to get some rest. For people that are dealing with stress, we've got folks that are using a dropper full in the morning and one in the early afternoon after lunch before they go back into the office, right? And so they're trying to manage different issues, and they're sort of playing around with it in that regard. And then we introduced the 1500 for two reasons. One, there are folks that need more, right? So that fundamental dosage of 25 milligrams of CBD is just not enough. And so they want more. And so that's why the 1500 per dropper gives you approximately 50 milligrams of CBD plus the other ingredients there. And in this case, we didn't remove the THC. It's THC compliant, which means it's 0.3. It's still considered hemp. It's not going to give anybody the psychoactive effect, but THC in some of the literature seems to have a greater impact on relief associated with discomfort or other issues. And in fact, even some of the literature points towards the THC having a positive impact on nausea, right? And so people dealing with any kind of aggressive medical procedures, nausea is a part of it. And then there are just people in our society that just nausea is an issue, right? And so I know some folks now that we're getting car sick, that are using that advanced, and it's helping out with that issue. And so I've described a pretty broad range, but this is what we know today from the literature, and a person's just going to have to sort of think about it. So one dropper full of the 750, 25 milligrams of CBD is a good place, I think, for people to start. And if you find that's not giving you what you need, you can go to more. If it's giving you what you need, you might try a little bit less to see what your threshold is. And of course, if things are a little more exaggerated, there's discomfort they're trying to deal with, then the 1500 with that compliant THC may be that next thing they need to try.
Right. Now, my mother, for example, for those of you who know me, she suffers from dementia. And with dementia patients, because of their inability to remember, they become very anxious. Their anxiety level is very high. And so we've kind of figured out, too, that in the evening she has what they call sundowners, but as the sun goes down, she becomes even more anxious. The anxiety level is very high. And she says that it's because I'm used to everybody coming home from work, everybody coming home from school, having to cook meals, and now there's nothing going on. So the question I ask is that, with her, we've noticed that if at 3:30 in the afternoon is the best time to give her a half a tincture and we've gone from the 750 to 1500 and a noticeable difference with her anxiety level. But you can see a calmness within 15 minutes of taking it. So is this product something that, in your expert opinion, is it something that you should use consistently on a regular basis twice a day, or is it an as needed, or is it a combination of the two?
Well, one, before I answer that, let me just compliment you and let you know how much I appreciate how involved you are in your mom's caregiving, and you're a good, thoughtful son. And there's a lot of people like that out there, but man, it needs to be recognized because not everybody pays so close attention. In my opinion on this, I think you've got to look at what your circumstances are. If you're a person that stress is just an obstacle, which is what you're describing with your mom and what's going on with her, I can imagine how disturbing it must be, right? All of a sudden, as that sun's going down, that your usefulness isn't there anymore in your mind, right? And so if you're a person that this is a chronic situation, you should be using this or your solution every day, right? Because the circumstances don't change day to day. Right. And stress, anxiety, and the far reaches of that is a problem for significant portions of our society. I mean, look at how many people are self-medicating with things like alcohol or prescription drugs with the support of their physicians or other means. And so, hey, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. And bottom line is there's a lot of stress and things to try to manage and deal with. This is a safe and positive thing to utilize because there are other things going on with this product, including antioxidants that help out with cardiovascular health issues and a lot of the other stuff that we've described. And so this is a beneficial product regardless of whether you're trying to arrest stress or not. If you're a person that you have a fairly stress-free life and stress for you is an occasional situation or an acute momentary thing, and so maybe it was a bad commute on the way home and you get home and you're just looking for some relief, that's a great product to go to. For me, so much of my life has evening work, not with stress necessarily, but you got to be sort of on your game. Right. And so I use it every day because it's just an easier way for me to sort of dial back a little bit and slow things down. And I don't, mind saying, and I'm not saying this with any embarrassment, before this product, that was probably a glass or two of red wine.
Sure.
And I don't think that was too much, but it's a lot of sugar and calories. And If I can avoid that and still get the rest I need, and I'm probably not alone in that situation, right? We all have coping mechanisms that we find and we adhere to. I've just found that I can use one of those droppers and within a few short minutes, I'm in a state or a place where it's pretty easy for me to fall asleep because I need to sleep. My body's tired, but probably everybody listening has been too tired to sleep, right? That's because of the stress factors also associated with it. So if it's a chronic situation you're trying to address, it's a day in and day out product. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's incredibly healthy. And if you're just trying to deal with some acute situations, then you just use it periodically.
Right. And hey, the last question I got for you before we wrap up is this: is just like anything else on the marketplace, the quality is going to vary dramatically in what you're getting. But what's interesting is it's what I've noticed in the CBD market is so does the price. You can find it out there for, $50 and $60. And I've even had a lady who contacted us and who had went to a dispensary and paid $500 for a 500 milligram. And when we looked at the ingredients, it wasn't anything on there that warranted $500. But what we in the United States, we have a tendency to think more expensive is better. I paid more, so it's got to work better. But I'm hearing and in discussing with you that's not always the case.
No, it's not always the case. And just like with any situation like this, the variety or the potency or the quality, whatever you want to call it, of the biomass or plant material we can buy and process is all over the board.
Right.
I mean, and that's based upon a region. Our product is a organically grown in the United States product. The strain we work with, the genetic strain we work with, has got a 10 plus year history that comes out of medical marijuana research. We think that's important. We want to know about our strain, we want to know about our product. We want it to be predictable. We want it to have a nice safety history. But here's what I've learned. If you wanted to go out and buy an inexpensive product, you can do that, but the quality is suspect. You know, it might only be an isolate that's being produced in a environment in a third world country without any sort of quality regulation, and we don't know what's been added to it to make it palatable. And when you see something, you go, man, that's significantly less expensive than the standards you see. You can probably just know that, hey, it might work, but most likely it's not quite what you think. And probably if you knew its history, you might not want to use it. I've even seen some products that when you dive into the label, it's a hemp oil extract, but there's no content or no commitment to the amount of cannabidiol or CBD that's in the product. And so they've just got an extract of hemp oil that's, say, 1,500 milligrams, but of what, right? Just a broad stroke oil without that specific cannabidiol that you're looking for. What we believe, and I can say this with complete confidence, is that we've got a fairly priced product based upon its quality. You know, we're conscious of the marketplace out there, and we've spent time to make sure we know our sourcing, we know our product every step of the way. We spend the extra money to do CO2 extraction, so there's no chance of solvents or other things that get involved. It's a full spectrum or a broad spectrum, depending upon the terms that you're accustomed to. And then finally, we just make sure that the product is nano-sized, because at a nano-sizing, not only is it more readily absorbed in the body, but you've got a greater surface area with the end CBD for interacting with those regulatory systems that we discussed in the first part of the call. And so if it's too cheap, then it's too cheap. And that I can just tell you firmly, and you need to pay attention to that. And then if it looks like it's out of bounds from a pricing standpoint, and there's a big flowery story associated with it, question that, because there's a middle ground here that makes sense. And of course, if you go on our website and look at the standard bullet points for what our product is, non-GMO, all those factors, that'll give you a good buying guide, no matter whether you're buying our product or somebody else's, to make your decision.
Absolutely. And to let the viewers know, I'm going to be adding in the notes below, in the comments, you're going to have some links that are going to link you to the information Eddie was just referring you to. It'll carry you right to the product page. It's got all the information on there, everything we discussed today. In addition to that, it's got frequently answered questions. It's got the science behind the products. There's some great information on there. And we're going to be coming out with a video next week that's going to be talking about detoxing the body. And that's so important as well. I know you agree with that, Eddie, is that, you know, you got to put the good in, which is what we've talked about today, and getting the cannabinoid system and the cannabinoids and the CBD and the hemp oil in your body. But detoxing and removing toxins is so important. So tune in to this channel next week as well when we come back to you and talk about detoxing the body. Eddie, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know you're very busy, and you guys we're now shipping to over 60 countries around the world. And so I'm sure that's got you, you know, listening to things, trying to learn all those different languages. But but I appreciate you spending time with us today and sharing that information. It's a great information, and I'm sure the viewers will get a kick out of that. I appreciate your time.
Alan, thank you for having me, and look forward to next time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And folks, don't forget, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that you get notified each and every time we come out with a new video. And we want to thank you for joining us today. Appreciate your time, and want everybody to have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.